What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel, and today we are here to talk about the Raw after WrestleMania 41. The Raw after Mania, one of the biggest and most important shows of the year. The show that kind of sets a lot of the next year's storytelling up well in advance. So let's just get into it. Let's just talk about everything that happened on the show. I've got all my notes here, and we'll just go through the show and just talk about everything that did happen. The fallout from Mania, where does it look like we're going to go? Obviously, we've still not seen everything. And the fallout from all the matches. Obviously this week we still have NXT tomorrow and SmackDown on Friday. I doubt I'll be making videos on them just because I'll watch NXT probably. I might make a little video. SmackDown, I'll be working, so I won't have a chance to. So the show opens with the new and 17-time WWE Champion John Cena making his way to the ring, and I am loving this presentation of John Cena. The black Tron just saying John Cena. Him wearing the title backwards, so when he holds his little towel up behind his head and he just walks the ring, you just see, his towel with his the last time is now on it, I believe. And then the title facing back the way. That whole presentation of John Cena I'm really into. He gets into the ring, he then calls the ring announcer in and basically says, "You did not announce me properly, do it again. Here is a brand new announcement that you need to read out." Absolutely fantastic, it was brilliant. And then Cena cuts his promo, and again he is cutting the whole abusive relationship promo. This is not how it should work. You boo me, you cheer me, I take it all, but you don't care. It's an abusive relationship. He's pointing at parents in the front row and couples in the front row, and he's like, is this how you treat each other? Because that's not how you should do it. And I don't really like the whole abusive relationship thing stuff. It just feels underbaked. I don't get it. But then again, he calls out the Raw after Mania crowd. He's like, yeah, go on, cheer or boo, do what you want. This is your show, right? This is the one that you always take over because you're more important than the wrestlers. And I've loved that little sort of jab at it. He then says, you can talk all you want, but the main thing is 36. 36 dates is all I have. And currently we're down to 27. Raw last night was 27. That's all we have left of John Cena. 27 more appearances. He then says that by the end of the year he will retire with that championship and he will end its lineage. The championship that was carried by Bruno Sammartino and Buddy Rogers and Stone Cold and Triple H and The Rock and Shawn Michaels and all of these legends. The lineage of that championship will die at the end of this year when John Cena retires and they have to create a new champion and crown a new first ever champion. John Cena says that as the greatest champion in the history of WWE, he's going to take the greatest championship in the history of WWE. He's going to retire it, and everyone that comes after him, they will have to start again. Pro wrestling, as we know it, will have to start again because no one was better than John Cena. And this is what this character should have been all along. This is what this heel turn should have been. The whole, oh, I'm in an abusive relationship, this isn't how you should treat people that you're supposed to like, or blah, 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 blah. That is dog shit. This is fantastic. Out of sheer spite for the way the fans have treated him all these years, cheering him, booing him, always deciding that he's never enough, he does everything, it's never enough for the fans. He is going to take the championship and the prestige of this company and end it. The thing that has been carried for over 70 years from Buddy Rogers all those years ago. The thing that Bruno Sammartino held for 7 years. The championship Roman Reigns held for 1,000 days. That will be no more if Cena gets his way. And this is exactly what it always should have been. Cena then calls out Cody by name and says, that is the best shot you had. You threw him at me at WrestleMania and it did not work. I will leave in December with this championship and there is nothing you can do to stop me. And then he says to everyone, get your phones out because for the last time, the champ is here, or the last ever champ is here. The last real champ is here, sorry, that's what he said. And as he's holding it up, Randy Orton comes into shot behind them as he turns around to give the fans on the other side a chance to get a photo with the champion for the last time. As he sees Orton, he just goes, shit! And then gets dropped with an RKO. What a worker. What a fucking worker. Dropped in a shit before getting dropped with an RKO. And we are obviously setting up for Cena and Orton at Backlash. Now, for the love of God, have a good match. They've had like 5 good matches ever, and they've had like 47 matches ever. Have a good match. Please have a good match. Obviously, Backlash is in St. Louis, that is in Orton's hometown, and I just want it to be very, very good. I want it to be fun. I want it to be a wrestling match, unlike, I don't want Travis Scott, I don't want The Rock. I just want the pair of them to go out as each other's most historic rival, and just hope. So, the first match of the night then came with Liv Morgan and Raquel Rodriguez getting their rematch for their WWE Women's Tag Team Championships. They just lost the night before to Lyra Valkyria and Becky Lynch. Before the match, Once again, the mask is off with the racists in this company. Like, people are just so openly now being racist and pieces of shit. Because Pat McAfee was there, Raquel's getting all up in his face, and he's like, I don't understand, you got to speak English to me. Speak English to me, Raquel, speak English. And then as she walks away, he's like, I don't understand a word that she said, but she didn't sound happy. What is going on in that company? It's World Wrestling fascism is what they're fucking getting at with Heyman's comments on the Pat McAfee show, and Pat McAfee doing this, and El Grande Americano, and everything. It's to people with half a brain, everyone thinks it's fucking gross. But TKO, I guess, because the UFC has that right-wing audience, they just assume that the fans of wrestling, the gayest thing in the world, would be the same. And then also Brad Baylor, fuck you. However, to go back to the match with Becky and Lyra versus Raquel and Liv, I thought it was fine. Not a lot of note happened. Becky and Lyra kind of took the fight to them early. Then over the first ad break, Raquel and Liv get back into it. There was a big cool double powerbomb spot. I think Becky goes up and she's got Raquel on the top rope. And then Valkyrie tags in and they're looking to go for like a double superplex sort of move on Raquel. Liv comes up and kind of jumps off, flips around and kind of victory roll powerbombs Becky off. Then Valkyrie goes for or just gets picked up, goes for a moonsault or a runner rather. Raquel catches her up, big powerbomb off the top for a near fall. The match was going good, obviously some scrapping. Then Valkyrie gets spiked on the top of her head with an Oblivion to lose the titles a night after they won them. Back to the Judgment Day. Also, Becky can turn heel, and I ask, why did we not do this last night? You've also took Bayley out of her WrestleMania match for this story. What is the fucking point in this? You take Bayley out of this feud, and realistically, what I thought could have been a fun move is turning Valkyrie heel at Mania on Bayley and running that feud going in. But no, we took out an interesting story, and now Becky's come back. The fans were like, okay, Becky's come back. It sucks that Bayley's out of this picture, but we're going to cheer because Becky's back. And they win the title, and everyone's happy, and Becky gets a big reaction in the arena, and then she kills Valkyrie. And then because everyone is so excited that she's back, no one is booing the heel turn. They're chanting one more time as she's putting the boots in on her protege. And all during this, she's never looks like she's like knocked her out or fully handled her. Lyra is just kind of crawling away looking like sad and like, what have I done? Oh no, like shit, I've upset my hero, instead of being like, oh fuck, I'm getting my ass whipped. The fans are cheering for the heel and everyone in this looks stupid. And all the while we could have done this last night. For what reason? For what reason was the point in this? And the way they've done it? And realistically, is this a way to get her in with Seth and Heyman? Probably. But I think if you're going to put anyone into that faction, in the women's division, there's a very obvious name, unless you want to, I guess, make it 4 of them, and you've got 2 mentors and 2 young up-and-comers. We'll talk about that in a bit. I guess that could work, but this just didn't work for me. The match was fine, and then everything after it just ruined it. Like, none of this really worked for me here. The New Day then come out, cut a little bit of a promo. They said the greatest tag team of all time, yada yada yada. Then Alpha Academy interrupt them, and I was like, why the fuck would Alpha Academy interrupt them if they've just won? And then Maxine goes, the last time that you took on, last time you wrestled Alpha Academy, you lost in a minute. So why don't you put those titles on the line? And then they were like, no. And then Maxine kind of goads them into it. They get a ref out there. Lights go down. New music hits. He's back, baby. Let's put him over here. There we go. There he is. Rusev is back. Yes, the returning Rusev, the returning Miro, one of my favourite professional wrestlers ever, probably, is back. The New Day scarp her up on out of there. He then handily lays out both members of the Alpha Academy, and he got a big old pop when he came back, and I'm very excited for him to be back. Now, I'm just going to say this very quickly because obviously there is a lot of point scoring going on and people saying, oh good, he's finally going to be back with someone who knew how to book him well. He was booked incredibly in AEW. The issue with that is, and listen, I always say, 9 times out of 10, I am on the side of the person who decides they're not going to be losing and ruin their career in a company, because that is based. I am almost always on the side of that because I think that shit's based. The reason he stopped appearing in AEW is because he just started refusing to lose. And I get it. they sacrificed him to Sammy Guevara, which was the right call at the time, and maybe he saw, the willingness to end his TNT title reign for Sammy Guevara, who is like one of the biggest underdog babyfaces in the company. And then look at how very quickly Sammy Guevara lost all goodwill with the fans. So I guess he was like, listen, you tried making a star off my back once before, that shit didn't work, give me all the wins. But then he was like, yeah, but I'm not going to lose to Hangman Page. I think you got to pick your battles when you're not going to do the job, brother. Because that's a match that Miro should be losing. But no, I'm very happy to see Rusev back in WWE, in the WWE fold. His new theme is dog shit, though. He got Def Rebelled, but he looks great. He still looks like a fucking monster, and I'm excited to see what we do with him going forward, because I don't think there is an entirely obvious place to slot him in, which is my worry. I would have said possibly in the Intercontinental if Dom hadn't just won it. Yeah, have him go against main event Jey Uso and lose. I don't love that. So I'm intrigued to see where he goes, where he slots in, but I'm very excited to see him back in WWE. And just on my TV in general. We then go backstage to the Judgment Day Clubhouse. You have Dirty Dom and once again the tag team champions of Liv and Raquel. They do a little cheers with the belts, and then Carlito tries to cheers it with his apple, which I thought was really funny. They're all kind of saying, look, the Judgment Day, we all have championships. And then Finn comes in, gets a little bit silent, a little bit awkward. And Liv's the one who breaks the silence. She gets in the middle of Finn and Dom as they're having a stare down. She's like, well, Finn, you said that as long as one of us wins, then the Judgment Day always wins. The Judgment Day have the championships. And Finn's like, well, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, buddy. I'm proud of you. And everyone's like, hey, the Judgment Day, we're all fun. We're all back together. Woohoo, yay. But obviously Finn is glaring at that Intercontinental Championship. Finn also says later on tonight, when Dom is in the main event against Penta, he'll be with him. He'll be by his side. But again, as soon as Dom turned away, eyes were locked on that championship. Io Sky then comes out, cuts a promo, says that WrestleMania was the biggest day of her life. She became the first ever Japanese woman to win on WrestleMania. I don't know if she said that or if commentary pointed that out, but that's true. She became the first ever Japanese woman to win on WrestleMania, and she became the first Japanese wrestler to win at WrestleMania since 1997, which is, or 1998, it's either 27 or 28 years, which means the last time a Japanese wrestler won at WrestleMania was 97 or 98, one of the two. Io cuts his promo, talks about how, Bianca and Rhea overlooked her, but now she's undeniable. She is the champion. She is the best the company has to offer. Guess whose music hits? La Primera, Stephanie Vaquer. Brother, they were in that ring going aura for aura, and I was buzzing. They cut a promo going back and forth, talking to each other, bigging each other up, and then the idea of going one-on-one is floated. Io says, Stephanie, let's do a wrestle. Adam Pearce comes out and he's like, whoa, 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 and completely ruins the flow of the whole segment, because he's like, Stephanie wants to wrestle and Io wants to wrestle, but do the fans want them to wrestle? As if the whole place wasn't going fucking nuts like 30 seconds ago. Instead of just having a ref run out there, you just kind of put a weird bit in to interrupt the flow of the segment, I guess, for kind of no reason. But it was fine, because we got a ref out there and we had match of the night. And I know it's not hard, because there was only 3 matches on the whole show. 3 matches on a 3-hour wrestling show. I thought it was still a good show, but that's fucking insane. But these two just went back and forth and were hooping. We also got a mention of World Wonder Ring stardom on World Wrestling Federation television, which is ironic because that's where Davina Rose is going to be very, very soon. But no, the match was great. Both of them just going back and forth, hitting all their big moves, but not really able to hit the big move. I think Io might hit 1 moonsault, but Io typically wins off about 17 moonsaults. But they were going back and forth in incredible chemistry. They both worked really, really well together. And then just as we're kind of getting into the closing stretch of the match, it felt like Roxanne Perez comes in, jumps Io. Then Julia also comes in to jump Io, and it's Julia and Roxanne are beating both of them down. Which, Julia's inclusion felt very important to me here. Roxanne is obviously wrestling Stephanie Vaquer for the NXT Women's Championship tomorrow on NXT, so that kind of made sense. But Julia getting involved, to me, especially the fact that Julia was going after Io mostly and not after Stephanie once Roxanne went over and started laying him in on Stephanie, that to me feels like we have now called Julia to the main roster, which I have said I think we should be doing, especially after we took that title offer to put it on Stephanie, because I know she was injured and then came back from that injury fairly quickly, a lot quicker than we would have expected, especially because this made her lose that match because of possible injury issues. I think now that we've made Vaquer the undisputed face of that women's division, then you just move Julia to the main roster. She's ready. She doesn't need to be in a developmental brand. I've said that since forever. I said that about Jordynne Grace as well. Potentially the biggest reason they put her in there is just because there wasn't a lot of room on the card for her at the time. But WrestleMania is the great reshuffle, it's the great restart, it's the full year reset. And whilst Roxanne and Julia were putting the boots in on Io and Stephanie, Rhea's music hits, and Rhea comes in, cleans out Roxanne, and then just stares down Julia. And Julia walks away, but we got a stare down between them two, which again, to me, feels like Julia is now a member of the Raw Women's roster, and that is exactly where I think she should be. The segment then ends with Rhea setting her sights on that championship, but giving it back to Io. Basically giving Io her flowers, but going, I'm not done, we're not done, I will win that championship back. Give her Backlash, and then have her go into the summer program with Julia. That's exactly what we should be doing with Rhea and Julia at this point. I really enjoyed all of this. I thought the match was fantastic. However, I would have just preferred the match to actually have a winner. I would have preferred Io to get the win. You know, it doesn't hurt Stephanie as the NXT champion to lose to Io as the Women's World Champion and then still go on and have that match tomorrow. In fact, if anything, it adds a little bit more intrigue to that match tomorrow, and it makes it all the more impressive when she beats Roxanne tomorrow. And I'm totally okay with Roxanne coming in and jumping. I'm totally okay with Julia showing up, obviously. And I'm completely fine with all the post-match antics, but I just would have rather seen a win in this match, a definitive finish in this match before we got all the nonsense. We then went from possible highlight of the night to an extended Jey Uso celebration. I played a little rousing video package for Jey Uso. Then Jey Uso comes out, yeets his way to the ring, gets into the ring, grabs a mic, and then... Also, when he came out, the crowd obviously then got into it, but when he came out and when his music hit, the crowd were not loud enough. The reaction he got was not loud enough to justify him tapping out Gunther. And it was bad. It didn't look good. Then he gets in to the ring. As he's going down the ring as well, actually, when he's making his way to the ring, Michael Cole says on commentary that in back-to-back years, Gunther has lost to massive underdogs. And that makes sense for last year's WrestleMania, but at no point on Saturday was Jey Uso ever wrestling as the underdog. That match wasn't built around an underdog win. That match was just built as a 50-50 match of equals, essentially. When the whole story is that Jey Uso was the underdog, and then also that he can't hit his move right, apparently. And it was bad, and it was awful, and I hate it. And then Michael Cole just said, and then Michael Cole also just dropped another stinker on commentary. Was like, oh, now we have a champion who smiles. What the fuck does that mean? Who cares, brother? Shite. Anyway, Uso gets in the ring after yeeting, grabs his mic to go start saying something, and the crowd just say, run it back, basically. So he runs back his entrance because that's all he has. Runs back the yeeting, starts cutting a promo. Sammy's music hits. I was like, Sammy, haluva kick this man's head into the stratosphere for the love of God. Also, if you're that crusty fucking bitch who had that Israel flag behind Sammy, die slowly. But Sammy comes out to the ring and then gets in there with Jey Uso, says, listen, I've been out for a few weeks, for a wee while, and it's been really... It's hurt me to see Gunther do all this to you and just know that I couldn't be here, but I wanted to be the first man to get down to this ring, and I wanted to be the first man to tell you. And then he waits and he waits and he waits, and I was like, oh, Sammy, tell him it should have been you. Tell him it should have been you. And then, no, he just says congratulations. They hug. Big Jim comes out, then both of them hit the fucking... The handshake, he hits it on both of them. And then we just have some yeeting. Bit of a nothing segment, really. Just doesn't even cut a real promo. He just does his entrance twice. 3 times, actually, because then it ends with everyone yeeting, because that's all he has. We then showed Logan Paul's post-match comments into Jackie Redmond interviewing AJ Styles, into Karrion Kross interrupting that, especially after what happened at the weekend with Karrion Kross. I was very excited to see this. This was just a bit of a nothing segment again. AJ says, you want to see me become the man I was last year, at the start of last year. I didn't like that person wasn't me, I don't ever want to go back to that. And then he kind of walks off, and we're maybe getting Kross versus AJ. Does Kross send AJ out? Does Kross pack Uncle Alan's bags? Because it kind of feels like AJ might be done with the company. Listen, you're doing all this stuff with Karrion Kross. He's been in the background of everything. He's kind of involved in all of these stories in one way or another, but you're not really doing anything with him. I think if you haven't been the one to send AJ Styles out on his Shield, then you do that, I think. I think it's a way to make Karrion Kross feel like a big deal, and he does feel like a big deal already, but kind of he's making himself feel like a big deal. I don't think the product is necessarily making him feel like a big deal, and if we can do that, I think we do this. If this is an option where we can just have Karrion Kross come in and send AJ Styles, like I say, send AJ Styles out on his Shield, then we've made a star. Also then, one of the most confusing moments of the night, Michael Cole and Pat McAfee advertised the new Netflix documentary series, WWE whatever it's called. Here's the name. And the show that just basically pulls back the curtain entirely, and it's, you know, and they're in the writers' room, and it's got like a clip where it's from the Cody Owens match, and you've got someone on the headset going, no, they're okay, they're just selling, it's fine, they're just selling. And you do all this leading into this next segment, where basically this ad for the show that says, hey, wrestling is all fake. Personally, if you want to make this documentary, that's cool. Obviously, Netflix want the content, and it'll probably be a really interesting documentary, but this shouldn't be being advertised on the WWE shows. You would never have, in the middle of Friends, or in the middle of an episode of Friends, have, you know, Chandler pick up a book or a magazine, and then on the front of the magazine it says Matt LeBlanc talks about the challenges of being in the TV show Friends, or like whatever the fuck, you know, like you wouldn't do some shit like that in a regular TV show. And that is essentially what this is. But we do want to present it like a sport. It is the best of both worlds, and it's this wonderful thing, and we all know what it is, but we all accept it for that, and we love it, and we suspend our disbelief. But then if you're telling us in the middle of this show to go, hey, watch the show that tells you everything that you're watching is actually bullshit, it completely ruins the illusion for me. And you run that before this next segment, nonsense, because the next segment, Gunther comes out and he's challenging Michael Cole for what he's been saying on commentary. And then Michael Cole, you know, keeps saying, listen, I'm a commentator, I've got to do my job. And then he's like, and you did also tap. Don't poke the bear, Michael Cole. Don't poke the bear. Gunther comes up, throws his headset off and picks him up, puts him in a sleeper hold. Pat McAfee comes out, hits Gunther with a forearm, and then he gets choked out, he gets bitched out. So Pat McAfee runs to the aid of Michael Cole, only to then get put in his own sleeper hold for good measure, whilst all of the Pat McAfee show run in like little geeks and get held back by commentary. And Gunther keeps that shit on for like 2 minutes. And again, he's made this move his. Jey Uso has never won with a submission before the other night. Never won with a submission. He didn't work the neck. He didn't work the head. He was purposefully working the ribs. Every time I think about Jey Uso, I think I've got to start doing breathing exercises. I hate him. But this segment fucking ruled. We then get Joe Tess on commentary, and as we see Joe Tess putting the headset on, he's just in a pair of jeans and like a shirt. Joe Tess came down in his in his street clothes with a fucking nice little blazer on, but just in a pair of blue jeans to call the rest of the show because he was just, you know, drafted in. Cole then comes back to do the rest of it. I think this is a very interesting way to take the character of Gunther. You know, he's so angry at the fact that he lost, and he can say, you know, he got complacent, and now everyone is making fun of him and needs to remind everyone who he is. I think that's an incredibly interesting way to take this character. If it stays an incredibly interesting way to take this character, we have to wait and see. But for now, the fact that, you know, he essentially realises what he's done and is taking it out on anyone who has anything to say to remind everyone that he is still that guy. And if you want to talk loud, then you're going to get fucking killed. And remind everyone who he is and where he is and who he always has been. I'm really into that. We then had the main event match of the night with Dominic Mysterio versus Penta. It was fine. The two of them have good chemistry. I don't think a lot was necessarily going on here. We had a little bit of a Carlito distraction. Penta hits a Rana off the apron, Finn on the outside, which kind of takes Finn out for the rest of the match. The rest of the match was about 30 seconds anyway. Penta gets up onto the top rope to hit a dive onto Dom. JD McDonough returns then, shoves him off the ropes. Dom then capitalizes, 619, frog splash. Dom wins a good match, but nothing real of note happening apart from Mr. Please Don't Google My Name returning after breaking those ribs. And obviously the Judgment Day then Scarper up the ramp with all the championships. You see them then, the way it was shot, again, very interesting. You've got Dom, JD and Carlito run up the ramp, then Liv and Raquel come out to celebrate, and then Finn kind of comes in right at the end. And Finn, the whole rest of it, looked really upset. Like, has McDonough turned his back on him? Obviously he's the one who brought him into the Judgment Day. He's the one that like was his idol. He got this man into the business. Has he now turned his back on Finn? For Dom, Finn's, you know, crazed, paranoid, the world is against me character could be really, really fun here. And then obviously again in this final shot, Finn is smiling, but the second Dom looks away, and the second he thinks no one's looking at him, again he's just back to being zoned in on thinking of what he's going to do to Dirty Dom and to get his championship back. In his mind he believes he should have won at WrestleMania. And then the final segment of the night, then Paul Heyman and Seth Rollins come to the ring. Rollins starts a little bit of a segment, you know, I'm the architect, I'm the visionary, I'm this, I'm that. Punk's music hits, out comes Punk. They have a little bit of a scrap. He throws Rollins into the corner, turns his back to focus on Paul, gets jumped, gets stomped, gets thrown out the ring. Paul Heyman grabs a mic, starts cutting a promo saying, there is now an undisputed #1 guy in pro wrestling. It's Seth Rollins. Paul Heyman is behind him. That makes him the man. Roman's music hits. Out comes Roman. Takes out Seth. Takes out Paulrus with a Superman punch as he's lining up to spear Paul. Gets speared by Braun Breaker. Braun Breaker comes out. Braun Breaker then sides with Seth. Braun Breaker, it looks like he's going to spear Seth. It's shot really well. Seth kind of stood across from him and they're there, one-on-one. And then Breaker runs for a spear, but obviously runs past Seth. Takes out Punk. Goes to the outside. And this really annoyed me. This really, really annoyed me. Roman's outside selling the spear. And then Breaker goes up to kind of pick him up. And Roman, of course, gets one of his moves in, because even in a beatdown, he's politicking. Yeah, so Breaker goes out and Roman is down by the timekeeper's area. Roman hits his kind of uppercut move, because obviously when he has to politic, he's got to get one move in even when he's getting his ass beat. Then Breaker basically sees that as, oh hey, guess what I can do? Run the whole way around the ring, hit that super spear right through the timekeeper's area, and Rollins and Breaker are now united under the guidance of Paul Heyman. And a very hot close to the show. This team is very, very intriguing. And admittedly, WWE have just once again jingled the keys in front of us, because Paul Heyman made some very gross comments on the Pat McAfee show. Things that are awful, things that should not be said. If it's not heel heat, if you need to resort to racism. And then they've just jingled the keys in front of us. They've been like, oh, Braun Breaker's a Paul Heyman guy. And it's mostly worked. I'm still completely grossed out by the way that they're just allowing these people to be openly racist. Especially saying all this right after buying AAA, but Triple K is going to do what he's going to do, isn't he? But just if we're talking about this from a complete product stance, a very interesting dynamic. And like I said, we're probably going to move Becky into this role when it should be Julia in that role if you take on anyone else under Paul Heyman's wing. I think it is quite interesting though if you do Seth and Becky with their proteges, people they're taking under their wing respectively, in a Julia and a Braun Breaker. I think that could be very interesting and a lot of fun. But just in general, I think it was a very hot close to the show, and a very good show. Now, very light on the wrestling, only 3 matches in a show that went a little bit under 3 hours. I would have liked to have seen more wrestling on this show. I don't think the New Day Rusev segment particularly worked. I mean, it did work, but I'd rather have seen Rusev just have a match, even if it's just a squash match. I'd rather have seen... Because what does he now do with the New Day? What do the New Day now do? If you're just putting them on TV to put them on TV without really giving us an idea of where they're going to go going forward, I don't think that works. Gunther killing Pat, great, especially gets Pat off TV because he's the worst. All the stuff they're teasing between Finn and Dom is really working for me. I'm very curious to see what they do with Penta next as well. Does he push up the card? Does he go for Uso possibly at Backlash? I don't think many people will be opposed to that. The Valkyrie and Becky stuff, I'm not into it. You could have just done this at Mania and I'd be more into it. But overall, I think it was a really good episode of TV. I give it an 8 out of 10 personally. And I think going forward, I'm very intrigued to see where this leads the WWE over the next few months. As well, obviously, Orton and Cena. We had to run it at some point, and I'm kind of glad we're just getting out of the way. Not that I think it's going to be a bad match, although history is on the side of it being a bad match. I'd just rather we do this now and we do kind of more interesting things down the line. Obviously, he was going to have to wrestle Orton on his comeback tour, and it was obviously going to be for the championship. But I just think doing it early, having it be his first defence as well, his kind of most storied rival for the first defence of the historic reign, I think that's a lot of fun. And then past that, we do Punk, we maybe do Rollins, we do Breaker, we do all these other people. I think it was a lot to be done there. Io as well, looks like a star. Julia on the main roster, hopefully. And yeah, I just thought overall a very solid episode of TV. But let me know what you thought of last night's episode of Monday Night Raw down in the comments down below. I want to know your thoughts on the whole show, the plans going forward. Let me know. I really do want to know what you thought. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and show this to your friends. Tell them about the handsome man on YouTube with the good wrestling opinions. Once again, guys, my name is Jake. This is Where I Talk Wrestling, and I'll see you next time.